Those of you who've just arrived for the first time, I would encourage you just to feel that you've been here your whole day or the week. The whole purpose of this space is for people to drop in. It's not meant to be one continuous event alone unless you wish to have it that way. You will not be left out if you have questions at all, or feeling that you are hearing things that have been said before. Don't hesitate to ask. The basis of being here is about inquiry, about openness, transparency, the practice of Dharma, of meditation as an all-inclusive practice of being more conscious of thought, speech, and action for the liberation from self-affliction and the elevation of goodness, truth, and beauty. And so if you have your notebooks, don't hesitate to keep making notes that are important to you. I know that we're saying a lot of things here. There's a lot of thought that's been stirred. There's been an emphasis on being peaceful, present. Don't hesitate to absolutely dive into those books. This is what's been happening all day. It's not me focusing, it's that thing over there. So I'm either going to fix it or we're going to turn it off, because I'm very comfortable with not using it.
I think it's the box.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm quite okay without the microphone. Are you? Okay. It's being recorded quite nicely on feedback on Facebook. So by way of saying, please, number one here is to... Is that thing off?
It's off.
Off. Leave it off. Don't want it. Don't want it. Most important thing that I'm emphasizing here is direct experience. Direct experience. Obviously, we're each breathing. People ask about the Dharma, the Sanskrit word for the transformation of affliction and the elevation of freedom. It should be analogous to breathing, done by oneself, done repeatedly, done well, and we don't do it just to breathe, we do it to oxygenate. Oxygenation of beautiful states of mind is a way to look at meditation. It's neither a postural preference of sitting over standing or walking over reclining. All posture, all time, all states, all context. I'd encourage you to remember that sequence. It's not common that you would hear it. And it takes what I feel, which is an absolute necessity out of the Dharma in spirituality, the concept of apartheid. It may be seen societally and politically, but spiritually it's alive and well. There are highly preferred environments to be more authentic versus inauthentic. Places that we want to go to live to be in heightened states of plant medicine revolution versus places that we're not doing that. Fine and dandy, but the organic approach is the implicit soul of the Dharma. I wish to embody radical naturalness on the terms of my life where I am fully and deeply. So this notion of overcoming apartheid is huge, which immediately displaces the need to integrate. That's a commercial concept. It's often used by teachers and students and workshop leaders and training advocates. I'm not dissing it, I'm basically saying it's full of shit. And there's no need to employ capitalist principles in states of consciousness. So if we remove off the mat and off the cushion, we are in life. Breathing is an in-life activity. So is the Dharma. It's an in-life, all time, all posture, all state, all context activity. Fair enough? Do we get that? I really want to emphasize that. A couple of announcements and more into what Heidi brought up this morning about let me get into that. Several people have asked me a couple of things about the retreats in Burma coming up and about the tour in Burma, just briefly about that. It's a 10-day retreat, January 31st to February 9th at the Mahasi Tatanayekta in Rangoon, the monastery where I once lived. It's unique in many ways in that it's the home, the epicenter, the origin of the worldwide lay mindfulness movement. We've heard the word mindfulness not ad nauseum, but it's everywhere today. It's in the corporate 500. Major corporations have departments dedicated to mindfulness training. My own war economy is very much directed by mindfulness training now. They have a mindfulness summit going on that just took place, I think, in New York, where the General of the Army was actually one of the keynote speakers. We've had physical discipline, now we have mental discipline through the power of mindfulness. Think about all those drone experts and those assassins that kill more mindfully. I'm not saying anything's wrong with that, but there's something inherently sick about it for me. This is where it all started. Back in '47, you can trace it there. It's a free retreat. It's often gifted to people. So if you have interest, on my website, you can sign up. There's about 3 or 4 spaces left. We have a strict cap at 20. If you are interested, go there. Everything is written up on the website. It'd be a delight to have you. It's a beautiful space. I'll be there from behind the scenes. There's very prominent teachers that you have a chance to interrelate with. And you get a very classical, intimate, sequential explanation of all posture, all time, all context, all state, mindfulness, and mindful intelligence practice. And there's a big distinction between mindfulness and mindful intelligence, just like there's a big distinction between emotional intelligence and mindful intelligence. If you're curious about those kind of things, please ask. There's a tour after that from February 10th to the 19th. It's not really a tour of places, although we have fantastic places that we'll go. I've always said, and I stand on it in life, that life to me is about the events of interaction. It's relational. Burma, like Ubud or New York or LA, anywhere in the world, it's a relational dance. Yes, I like scenery, but I really like the intimacy, the provocation, the meaning, the sense of purpose that comes from looking at someone from the heart, in the eyes, and learning, listening. Burma is a spectacle and a great dimension of emotions. Rare in the world do you see a culture that's been dominated by the white European and the oppressor, the colonialists, that took a beautifully quiescent, liberating culture and created a culture of servitude. For 150 years, the British came and dominated these people. We had a world war there, decimated. Almost every building that you see in Mandalay and Rangoon is colonial built, post-war. Tragic how my teachers would often explain how we were forced to observe our beautiful Burmese sister nuns being fucking raped by these fucking soldiers. Think about that. Unthinkable. Burma is a land of total dictatorship and totalitarianism. I had no idea what that meant really back in the 70s and the 80s, but the study of totalitarianism is fascinating. If you haven't, ask questions. If you've studied it, share your information. Burma is a land of dictatorship that psychologically morphed into the population. Control isn't just from one person down, it's passing on the lineage of indoctrination. It's a study of it when you go there. I would really highlight in your notebooks, if you're keen, what is the state of consciousness of self-conscription into lies. I wrote some things down. I want a couple of things with you that I want to share. Is that okay? Like the psychology of indoctrination, I made a note to myself. There's 5 points that I wanted to just share quickly. Denial, repression, reaction formation, regression, and rationalization.
Hold it again.
Denial, repression, reaction formation, regression, and rationalization. So denial is the unwillingness to accept reality. Repression involves completely forgetting the experience and burying it subconsciously. This is just the process of how mindful intelligence is compelled to feel more intimately into the nature of consciousness and psyche, yeah? It's neither a black and white dynamic. There's so many gradations of beautification. Reaction formation, going beyond denial, behaving in the opposite way to which you think and feel. You self-conscript into behaviors and patterns of speech that are completely at odds with your values and your principles and the truth of something. You are now in servitude and you joyously swipe and you like. Even things that you dislike, perhaps. How many people do that which is against their best interest? Then you have regression. You revert back to a less mature, more adolescent behavior. I don't know if that applies to you. Regression, you revert back to a less mature, more adolescent behavior. And then, let me finish these 5, hold on. We're going to have a chance to talk up. Just wanted to put out some outlines to say that there's many nuances to this process of beautification that we're doing here. And rationalization, occupying, or occurs when you try to explain your bad behavior and yet you repeat or reinvent your own lies. So it occurs when you try to explain your bad behavior in positive terms, or you repeat or reinvent your lies so they're more subversive. So you out-cunning your shadow. And that's the deeper level of rationalization. How many people justify knowingly with passion the rightness of a wrong? And so to be able to see these things isn't so easy. Okay, that's one thing. Several people brought up in the last 2 days, I just want to get this out. You know, there's so many things that have been shared here. Words and phrases and ideas. Can I use them? Do you mind if I post them? Encourage you to do that. You know, I own nothing except my language. I write books for a living and do recordings and broadcasts, so that if you do use them, may I be overly generous and just quote it and just say, listen, this is an Alan Clements idea or a quote. So be very careful with that. I recently saw someone who's a very best-selling author, verbatim 3 paragraphs of mine, and I wrote him and he didn't reply. And that's sort of the nature of things. It's happened repeatedly, but just be very mindful of that, if you will. People have asked me if you can, but just really be good about that. The other thing is the reason why this retreat, just to repeat that I'm here, is because I really am learning and yearning in somewhat of an elegant cycle to be out of my comfort zone, to be with new people, to learn from them, to love them, to learn how to love more openly, to listen to the terrain of their lives, to research, to just be in life again, and to come out of the familiarity of my sort of not 9 to 5 in my previous life in Vancouver with my daughter, but the familiarity of going to yoga twice a day, of broadcasting twice a week, and having a meal at a certain time, and there at Whole Foods is exactly the same fucking food on the same spot, on the same shelf. And so now I'm forced to have beautiful organic food with smokers all around me. And it's okay, fair enough, why not? Fuck you, close the door. Learning to speak up and not get too rancid about it. By way of saying that I've offered this, and it's been offered to me because of the one reason: I'm gifting it. It's not free. It's being gifted. It's a gift. Christmas, there's a gift. It's not a free gift. It's a gift. Primarily for the reason of not my altruism, because it was given to me as well, I didn't want to charge anyone, is because I have a deep fondness for single moms and single dads. And they're the ones that are often left out of the transformational world. They're busy with their children, with their partners, struggling in court. Who knows where they are? But single parents know the difficulty of finding time. Set aside finding resources to participate in something I feel so life-transforming. So the reason for this particular event is to support people like myself. I'm a single dad and single mom. So that's the reason why we're here. If you want to encourage people, the second reason is to expand my social network and my spiritual tribe. I'm looking for a place to live, evolve, and die. I've been all over Asia most of my adult life, off and on for 15, 20, 30, 35, 42 years in Burma. That's a long-ass time. I went there at 27. Sri Lanka 2 years, Kashmir for 6 months, Sri Lanka 2 years, Thailand a year, Bali 4 years, Vietnam. All these places, they're my home. I'm not sure where I'm going to live and grow and die, but Ubud was a place that I really was fond of. So I'm here investing in new relationships. By way of saying, please encourage your family, your social tribe, your network. Do what you need to do to film things or photograph things. Inform people, hey, listen, this is a time of radical economic and environmental collapse. We're in late stage capitalism. Get it. It is certain. It cannot continue at the carrying capacity that we are. It's just not going to happen. That we can keep using unlimited consciousness of resources with radically depleted ones. It ain't going to happen. Something's got to give. So many people are talking about extinction, whether it's now or next month or 20 to 50 years from now. Some even talk of near-term extinction. So it's a radicalization of purpose for me. We can't do it without each other. We can say everything in the world, but at the end of the day, this woman and this man bought my dinner. If I had nothing, you're my savior. I think I want to start operating more and more from the non-transactional state of mind. I don't want to do for you because you do for me. By way of saying, let's encourage and foster a new dynamic here in Bali and extend our social network beyond our ism, beyond our tribe, beyond our Buddhism, beyond our Akasha, beyond contact, beyond all the ways in which we have preferred our spiritual lives, and extend and say, hey, listen, there's a gifted experience here that isn't just about Alan, it's about we. Please come out and participate in the new dialogue. And so may I invite you, if you feel like taking a photograph or a film, let people in. They're all welcome, even for an hour. That's all. Okay. The other thing I wrote down, slightly inspired by Heidi and other people as well, was we talked this morning about Aung San Suu Kyi's response to me about what is the essence of spiritual revolution. And she said, the courage to care. And I wanted to just spend a minute or two on the non-black and whiteness of dealing either with recovery or addiction or affliction and the concept of beautification. That the gradation there, that gradation is a very interesting territory for me. I've had to learn over the years to be neither this nor that and be much more in embracing complexity is a better way to synonymously understand the function of meditation. It's neither a black and white choosing goodness versus darkness, rightness versus wrongness, yes, but the gradations, the nuances seem to be infinite of complexity. So, another way to look at meditation is the deliberate tension of reconciliation. It's a completely different concept of either or, working with shadow or darkness or with beautification. The deliberate tension, engaging deliberately, the tension of polarity. I'm neither in grief nor out of grief. It's calling upon the heart to be more mature to be a leader of complexity. We're embracing archetypally the epic mother. She has to understand her child's differences, difficulties, preferences sexually and gender. She even may have to deal with his rudeness, maybe even wanting to run away from home and still embrace him or her. And how many people have been imprisoned and incarcerated where those children have to be embraced by the father and the mother? There's lots of complexity. Meditation is one of the most difficult activities I've ever met or encountered on the planet, because it basically means giving up the dyad of right and wrong, having to really expand into the meaning of conscience. So the deliberate tension of reconciliation, I use the word reconciliation carefully because it implies the meaning of the word Dharma, as meditation is conscious engagement of transformational presence. Conscious engagement, the courage to care. I'm consciously engaging complexity. That's a very beautiful response to dealing with whatever you want to write down as aspects that you would like to overcome. Grief, sorrow, fear, the recurring memory of loss. My mom, when she was alive in her last year, she confided in me her whole life. I think I was her best friend. And she was one of my best friends, if not my best friend. And she couldn't stop the pattern of Dad is gone. And we made that so right that it became an act of beauty. That she had that level of depth, longing for the love of her life. I saw it as so profound. Could easily go into poor me or oh my God, and eventually she just saw it as like the embrace of the most challenging thing she's ever known. A man I've been married to for 76 years, I've known even longer. The elegance of loss. And right there, the word, I want to introduce the word and emphasize it, is confluence. People hear the word mindfulness and they see it more like a mirror in the mind. It's often defined as the bare attention of seeing reality rightly. When you hear a thought in the mind, mindfulness sees it as a thought. When you hear a sound on the ear, when you're really mindful, you just hear auditory vibration on the ear. Hearing, hearing. When you're eating and you're tasting, it's just taste, taste. You with me? When you have a mind state inside consciousness of joy, you're encouraged in the Vipassana system. Joy, joy, joy. Okay? That may be true, but the mirroring of it, seeing it as it is, those kind of concepts are so sterile for me and so masculine. I'm not trying to be a stickler here with language, but language dictates emotions. So pause right there. A lot of meditation, and a lot of meditation is ontological activism equal to mindfulness. You're having to study the energetic and the formation of languaging. Otherwise, you can be mindful of all you want about thoughts, but if you don't understand the patterning of that thought and the meaning of it, the implications of it, you'll be lost forever. You can't abandon thinking unless you have Alzheimer's. And a lot of people are meditative addicts who, I use this word sparingly, self-induce dementia. They're absolute idiots. And they call that stillness. Hello, fuck you, man. I want no part of your Dharma, no part of your theology. You are just an empty phenomena of photons? Yeah, I got that. You and Carl Sagan have been hanging out for a while. So confluence is a huge issue for me. How do I co-occupy complexity and dimensionality, right and wrong, good and bad, truth and ignorance, deception and transparency. Feel into those dualities rather than inserting the need to overcome them. I watch my daughter grow. She has to deal with this terribly beautiful, courageous act of increasing her skill in embracing complexity. Hormonally, psychologically, emotionally. Say no more about the state of the world, right? Aren't we called upon to embrace more complexity? I wish it was as easy as just to simply chop wood and carry water. And if you need to revert to that, absolutely. Okay. 7 parts I wrote, and we'll get into something else here. 7 parts on the courage to care. I'll just say them. And I say this also as engaging complexity. We worked earlier of people who took to the streets in solidarity to democracy and freedom. And we used the phrase, rather than being fearless, they learned to quiver in freedom. That's a very tall order to, I'm going to lose my home, I'm going to lose my resources, I might lose my safety and my freedom. I have to stand in solidarity with conscience that says living in servitude is no longer preferable to the quivering of freedom. Okay? If you need to engage shadow, forget beautification. Engaging it with what becomes the question. What do you want to do with it? Rather than, you don't want to wallow. You want to consciously feel it, inquire into it, investigate it, know it. Do what you can to understand it, to translate it, to possibly integrate it, transfer it into something higher. Alchemize it, whatever you want to do that process, okay? But the word conscious here becomes very important. What does that mean to you? I invite you to take it off of me. If you're going to be a conscious being, what the fuck does it mean? To me, it means mindful intelligence. And part of that is this 7-step process. Even if you want to engage shadow, loss, grief, fear, desire, projection, all those things that are necessary to engage, first there needs to be a recognition of the state. There has to be some discerning capacity to know what it is that's going on. Secondly, there needs to be some kind of conscious intervention, a deliberate act that says, this is not really what I want to do. Otherwise, my sense is it's just a repetition of the kind of nicotine of an affliction. It's got a little bit of a high, but a heavy down. Thirdly, to engage it in speech, thought, and action. The word engage here means something very important. Again, it means a degree of mindful intelligence, which to me means a combination of courage, conscience, integrity, determination, self-compassion, a consideration for the environment of my lives. If I don't attend to this, I affect my children, my family, my husband, my wife, my environment. And then, well, let me pause right there. With this third quality of engagement through speech, thought, and action, there is the direct felt engagement through the power of mindful, intelligent awareness. It sees, it engages, it discerns, it integrates, it allows it into the recesses of the neurons, it processes it through memory, and it says, you know, I want to stand more in liberty than in anguish. It's making a decision at a very neurological, nuanced level of confluence. Years back, when I became more involved in my thinking again after a long abstinence from it. I was encouraged by the Dalai Lama to consider advantages and disadvantages of states of being. This is called conscious reflection. I call it actually, the consciousness of challenging compulsion. Compulsion is another way to address and de-solidify addiction. It makes it more of a flowing state. I'm in a compulsive flow rather than addict. Today and 3 years into recovery from it. Create water, create the feminine, create movement within solidity. Life is an impermanent ocean flow of molecules. Compulsion is an appropriate word to talk about repetition of action, but it takes the solidification out of it for me. So conscious challenge of compulsion is another way to look at the slight addiction that we have to self-servitude. In other words, how disadvantages, difficult states, denigrating afflictive emotions become habit patterns that all of a sudden, when I was a child, I had so much anxiety that I found relief in pulling out my eyelids, my eyelashes. Others masturbate, others act out through other forms. That was one of my earliest ways to self-assuage my anxiety. Now, when you hear the word self-servitude, it's very difficult to get our heads around how would we ever consciously or unconsciously enslave ourselves in patterns of thought, speech, and action that denigrate, diminish, or make us more minuscule. How many Americans here? Maybe you might know this. A few. Oh, quite a few. Well, we have in our country, for those of you who don't know, and she's world famous, a black woman, a black African-American woman, Harriet Tubman. She was quite an important person in America who was perhaps the most courageous and famous of the underground freedom fighters who took her black brothers and sisters, encouraged them to stop working in slavery for the man and the woman, the white plantation, fascist, totalitarian assholes, and took them through a ferocious journey from Middle America to Canada to their freedom. And I find it very curious that when you read more about her history, she often had to use and employ a gun to the heads of these people to get them to break the habit of conformity and to flee and risk everything for freedom. Very crazy. But when asked near her death if there's any regrets, she's said to have said that I have but one regret, that I wish I could have freed 1,000 more of my black brothers and sisters, but they did not even know that they were slaves. Now, that's a radical comment. I can't imagine that there are chains on us and leg irons on us, or we're being obliterated by whips and denigrating behaviors, and somehow we normalize that to the point where it's an impossibility to think out of that chain or that box. But it happens all the time, doesn't it? We've talked about the Stockholm Syndrome, spiritual Stockholm Syndromes, how abusers become objects of passion and fantasy based on unrecognized patterns of abuse, and how they often metastasize into sexual romantic attractions. Very perverse, but it's alive and real. I ask you, Although we not have chains and we're not on plantations and we're not in some overt sense of servitude. But where in your life do you want to liberate? Make a go at it. Where do you want to find greater expansion? Some people want the ability just to simply speak up. Some say, I want to show up. What do those mean? I want to liberate. I want to expand. Advantages and disadvantages is a very helpful way to support meditation and mindfulness. And let me encourage you, what are the states of mind that you have most difficulty with? And write down 2, 3, or 4 reasons why you want to overcome them. They're disadvantages to you, or disadvantages to those you care about, or both. To see the flaw in something allows us more courage to challenge it, in other words. And I'll explain more. And then write down 2, 3, or 4 things on its opposite and why that is an advantage to inhabit and evolve that state. Now, this is called another form of Dharma literacy. Each of us know our native languages, but very few of us know the language of consciousness. It's one thing to talk about meditation and liberating states of mind, but to employ consciousness to liberate consciousness is the vocation of the Dharma savant. We're employing consciousness to liberate consciousness from disadvantages and inhabit advantage states of mind. So with every compromising state, whether it be fear, whether it be greed, whether it be sorrow, why is this something I want to challenge? What's the flaw in it for me? What's the downside? And I think therein lies where that thought, when it arises, as the Dalai Lama said, although I meditate, I equally employ conscious reflection to support momentary confrontations and challenges, to overcome the denigrating and to elevate the beautiful. So whenever in doubt, I would pause. Those of you who know me where I live, I have unlimited notes on the wall. I like writing. The disadvantages in projection. Why would I want to challenge projection? If you don't have Dharma literacy about that, you live in illiteracy, and only you are to blame for that. The process of the Dharma is a process of education of consciousness. We all know that, right? So we're employing every aspect of consciousness to help evolve consciousness. So we're using thought, not abandoning thought. There's nothing in consciousness that we want to demonize. Thoughts aren't the issue. Mind isn't the issue. We want to see and inhabit the environment of consciousness and make it a beautiful experience. That's all. So let me invite you, in your constellation of experiences and thoughts and emotions, start to begin to see an aspect of that, advantages and disadvantages. We're okay? 3 more, we'll stop. Number 4, sustained and elevating application. We're talking about the courage to care. It's a generalized concept. If we just stopped there, we wouldn't have seen into detail. We're looking at the nuances of neither either or. I'm an addict or a not addict. I'm employing beautiful states of mind here in 7 degrees to deal with complexity. Sustained, elevating application to deal with more consciously challenging compulsions. 5 is the active transformation of it. That takes a sustained engagement in something that's, what does the word transform even mean? That's a big word. Really a big word to retool, retrain consciousness to inhabit a more natural form of occupation, of a state naturally. So transform and naturalness are almost opposite. If we more naturally inhabit authenticity and compassion, I don't need to transform pretense. I'm more naturally in authenticity. So if you are aspiring to have a greater integrity in your authenticity, we will have to employ the art, the aesthetic, the intelligence of transformation. I could not encourage all of us to be as nuanced as possible. When you use that word, you are living in the experience, breathing transformation. Living, breathing Dharma. Do not leave your breath in the monastery was the common mantra. 6, very rare does someone do this. They actually have successes in their psychological, emotional, physical life. And there's this kind of thing that's let loose. I'm on to it now. I'm going to go on to the next great challenge. Rather, there is to spend time in conscious reflection on what you've done. So you strengthen the mindful intelligence and let it, nourish deeper parts of the psyche. Oh, that's amazing, I did that. Like I just surfed a 4-foot wave for the first time. How did I manage to do that? Well, I'd spent the last year doing this and doing that. Well, if I can do 4, I can do 8. I can probably even do 12 if I did this. It's like all of a sudden you get inspired to, how did I do what I did? Reflect on it. It's a common meditative encouragement with people. Reflect on what you did and really let in the joy of what you did. Breathe and oxygenate the beauty of what you did to feel what you feel. Spend time in the insight. Be satisfied, deepen one's soul. And lastly is be prepared to repeat all 7. Breathing is not something that you do, obviously, one time at a time. You do it again and again and again. So here we take work out of the process and we employ the most natural, compelling, passionate. So the last point here is taking work out of the Dharma. And this is very interesting for me, is to infuse where there is that work. How many people I've talked about, just pause, oh, I've got to go meditate now, I've got another 10-day retreat to do, or it doesn't quite fit for me. So the concept of aesthetics, sensuality, artfulness, I dare say eroticism and romance, that level of personal aesthetics with God, so to speak, with phenomena. That's your unique choice to inhabit the way that you touch, make love, kiss, dance, move. Inhabit the transformational intelligence of presence artfully, so that there's a joy in the theater of transformational presence. Otherwise it becomes ardent and unworkable and tedious. And how many teachers I've met who, it's just another gig. I mean, you too could say that, but not a Dharma teacher. It's just something that doesn't work there. It's like a shaman saying it's just another fucking ceremony. It just sort of contradicts the energy, so that we develop more of an artful, joyful, aesthetic, playful interaction with each other in the transformation from afflictive states to beautiful states. So I ask you and invite you, what are your aesthetics? What does it even mean to you? What are your color patterns? What do you like to wear? How do you like to walk? What do you like to look like? The makeup that you put on, the makeup that you take off. Do I need this? Do I don't need that? Really allow yourself to go absolutely wild in the aesthetics of your own chosen beauty. Let your physical presence, right, reflect your inner beauty. I say use life theatrically. So I encourage that part of the Dharma and to take the religion out of it. Enough worshiping at the altar of bullshit. Enough guru worship, teaching worship, Hindu worship. Just enough. We're all students of God awakening to the art of this diabolical, terrifying, magnificent theater play called life. So what's your part? What's your stage? What's your acting? What's your transformational art? How will you make love with this moment? So keep those frequencies very high, and it takes tiredness out of the space. So let me pause here. If there's things, you're welcome to stand at any time, take a moment. Do you have any questions? Things that you'd like to talk about in relationship to this before we move on to the issues that Heidi brought up after a break? Take a moment. Don't hesitate. I'll repeat the question, don't worry about it. If I can invite one thing before, just keep the questions very concise. How do we stop self-deprecation? Kylie. Kylie. Take your notebook out. Did you write these down? Did you write these 7 points down? What more could I say? Here, open your mouth, put this in your mouth. In all other things that don't work, take a high dose of something called love or intimacy or swimming. Do anything to break out of the pattern. That would be my suggestion. When I get into funk, 2 things that I do. If it's deep and sustained, I call in help. I'm on the phone with my fucking psychiatrist, my therapist. I've got 3 of them. And I am so there with them. Listen, Mitch. Listen, Janine. Listen, Marcia. Listen, Tom. Are you there for me in this particular... Go for it, Alan. Tell us the full dimension of what's going on. That's really beautiful. That on a sustained basis is one of the best things I've ever had in my life. Secondly, I do all the things that are positive to me that challenge those complicities with struggle. I go straight to the fucking mat. I take a walk. I eat the right food. I meditate. I take a shower or bathe. I read a passage of a book, of my own books. I remind myself. I sit down and write. I dedicate myself to more ardent time to the manifestation of vision. I reflect upon the creative process that I'm in. I employ all means possible to get out of that funk. Friends and the personal vocation of evoking the memory and the action of positive transformational action. That's it. Otherwise, a lobotomy.
I actually mentioned, I wasn't clear, collectively how do we do that? You know, so
Oh, you're going to the whole world?
Constant self-deprecation through labeling and looking at black and white and...
I go into any...
Yeah, like the labels we talked about.
Kylie, come to Burma with me.
I'm considering it very...
Come to Burma.
Really
Come to Burma, sit in the retreat for 10 days. I'll personally work with you every day. And I'll do everything I humanly can to support the intimacy of your own discovery of that issue and introduce you to great people where you can bring up the question, you can talk your heart out, you're in the company of good people who are coming along, and see what that little courageous act will do to support exactly the next level. Shifting contexts. You know, you have the mobility of the time perhaps, do it. It's a rare, rare event to see people. This person, oh, how are you? Where you come from? I'm from Australia. I'm from Sydney. I live in Canggu. And you, how are you? Well, I suffered 7 years being gang raped and the torture in the Rangoon prison. And you hear this all the time. And so it radicalizes your own incentive to be a better woman, a better man. That's why I'm going back. Outside of those heavenly messengers, I don't know anything else to do. Unless you're the lucky one who falls in love and all of a sudden the past is obliterated into this heavenly, magnificent, new romantic, erotic, special relationship, which could happen. So think of that. I don't mean to quickly answer a question, but let me be very concise and say it again. If you can afford it and you have the time, be in fucking Burma. This is the best place on the planet to look at these issues right now. You get to look eye to eye, heart to heart, have tea, do anything you want to do with remarkably challenging people who really will evoke some really radical energy in your spirit. Plus I'm there. I'm there.
Which airport are you at? Where, like, what is closest? I was looking at tickets last night, and I wasn't sure where you fly in, because, like, it's a huge difference depending on where you fly in. What town, like, what town in Burma is this in?
The center?
The retreat, yeah.
In the city of Yangon, Yangon. If you go to my website, which I think you've been there, right, Josh? And on the Burma tour page, you'll see right at the very top, maybe you saw that, details of the tour, 9 pages of where we're going, what we're doing. And then go to Wikipedia or look online and just do some Yangon, Myanmar searches and see. You could talk to Heidi, who was at dinner with us last night. She's been to Burma. Kylie's been to Burma. Anyone else here been to Burma? Shiva's been to Burma. Look at there in the back, Samantha. Would you all be willing to talk to Josh a little bit about your experience? Yeah? So talk to these individuals and get a sense of what it is. And you're more than welcome to come. I think it would be a very fascinating experience. I couldn't encourage you enough. This is my last trip. If you have interest to come along with what I'm doing, you're welcome to come. I will not be going back to Burma for the foreseeable years. Other questions about what we're doing here, what we're talking about, practices, writing? You're okay? Take your time.
Yeah, I just want to say, sometimes when we talk and listen a lot, it becomes like, buzzwords. So I feel like I need to stand up and shake my hips.
Listen, I stand up for that very reason. I am anti-sitting type. Yeah. No, you're welcome to also stand in the back. You don't have to sit. No one can do anything you want. I'm very comfortable with people moving and standing and doing what you do. Please take your time and go in there. Like, you came here for a reason. I want to encourage from this point on also. I'm really hip and open and down with people who have personal things that they want to talk about. I'm obviously not a Tony Robbins type, but if you want to get down with the microphone in your hand, either on film or not, you're welcome to hear yourself in front of this illustrious group. I'll be happy to stand with you or to sit with you and go as deep and intimate as you want with the issues that you feel in your life. Don't hesitate. I really, really like it. Especially the domain of manifestation, creative expression, books, whatever it may be. I'm really into relationships, if you haven't noticed. Especially ones where you're in already a relationship, where it's complex or beautiful or whatever. I like learning about that. I have a lot of feeling about that. Those who aren't in relationship, I like hearing about that. How do you deal with that? Sexual issues. No one's even talked about anything taboo here at all. Very, very tame group of people. No one's brought up anything really that we should, not even G-rated really. Everything happens at Akasha, but not here. Anyway, so don't hesitate to bring in anything that's taboo, that may be kind of, wow, can we handle that? Yeah.
Well, I have a question because I brought this guy here 2 days ago, and he came to me, called me. He was in such a state of mental obsession that he thought he was in like a spell from a black magic magician, and that's how much he was engaged and believing what his mind was telling him. He couldn't sit here because he needed to kind of, but how do you deal with that? Because there's more and more people that I can see that have a hard time with the reality as it presents itself, with all the extinctions in it, all that stuff. But because it reflects on our personal inhabiting this space, and being together.
It's funny you bring that up. I'm not laughing because of him, or I was just thinking that I tend to like people who are more overtly possessed than the ones who act normal.
Well, I thought he was very interesting, but he was
Yeah.
also very, very troubled.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel, I felt like I didn't
Yeah,
have
right.
capacity to put him back into normalcy, but I could at least point out to him.
Yeah. Let's keep it really personal to you,
Boy,
not about him. Let's not talk about people who aren't here. I don't want to. I don't.
It's very personal to me that
You can
he's
talk
here
with
in
him
my
then.
life.
I don't want to talk with him here on camera. It's his personal thing.
I think that's the polarities in myself, like the deep intimacy with relationship with people. And I have a lot of, sometimes I think a lot of us feel this kind of disappointment. You're quite open, you so want to go in depth with this person, and then suddenly things change and things shift. Of course, we can't blame things change all the time. And then suddenly I felt I'm pulling back to myself again. And then I do with all this expression, yoga, dancing, and into dancing, just like shift my whole world. I relate so much with dance. I just find myself in joy and ecstasy, whatever. But then again, I come back, this is to myself. Like how do I go into this platform again, to meet somebody again, to dance this again? It's like a circle. Keep going, waves and all that. And then it's very often I'm like, okay, I'm out there to meet people, and then through getting myself open, and then suddenly I'm like meeting with this disappointments again. Then I come back to myself, okay, I think I feel safe with myself. I like my dancing. That kind of situation.
This is an important question.
Oh, shit.
Important comment.
I can't remember how I said that.
I hear you. Like, I put myself out. You are public. You do your 5 rhythms dance. You're a woman living in Ubud in Bali. Yeah? You're open. And you put yourself out, and your comment, as I hear it, is that you are disappointed and you collapse back into what happened and why for. Is that something close to it? My first response is not glib, but obviously welcome to adult life. Secondly is more sincere, which is what's the vocation of my life? And I come back more to the transformation of my ignorance into the luminosity of insight and wisdom. What am I learning from my encounters? That's my salvation, that's my stature, my dignity, my touchstone of basic decency and sanity. Regardless of what happened, and it's been dark, we've talked about it, it can get much worse, is when I come back into how did that happen, I employ this awareness to what's been called by my friends the discovery of the unseen self. And I pay particular attention to how I put that on other, and I romanticize the rejection as what a loss it was for you. There's so many ways that I stay elegantly, romantically, erotically entangled in something that's simply very black and white. The person doesn't want to be with you. That's their right. Very simple. And yes, I know they lied to you and it was the greatest love affair on the planet, but the truth be, they got scared, and you can write a book about it, okay?
And then you can have this mental thing like, oh yeah, he's not ready for it, or not the right time, not the right person.
So the third information for me is, in the unseen self-discovery, is how to do it differently. And set aside the uniqueness of each encounter that we have where there's chemistry. It's not as if all teachings apply to the same man or woman. But by and large, there is some overlap. In other words, you want to be more discerning, and my general tendency is to be more circumspect, more slow, more gentle, and elevate intimacy to domains other than chemistry, natural chemistry, which is beautiful, or the overt expression, which is very easy for sexuality or intimacy, or even eroticism or relief, all the things that are very human, and just to be more in an elegant, romantic, erotic, sensual, artistic, sensual, playful, measured, slower rhythm of sapio-spiritualized sexuality, making more of an artful love affair with consciousness, and eventually, if you decide to touch fingers, maybe sometime in the future. There's something about that where friendship becomes more important than orifice fucking, to be very blunt about it. And even though it's elegant, it's spiritualized, you do it with incredible mindfulness, it's sacred, but you know, that's a very vulnerable act. It's a very beautiful thing today. It's so unbelievable that I want to be gentle with myself. And I think really what's the learning here is go slow. That's all. So it's normal to the unseen self, to what do I learn from it, and how to keep applying that with these 7 principles. Repeat, repeat, repeat. So get to know someone. That's all. I mean, it's a beautiful process, as you know, so that we minimize the potential for disappointment because we've bonded at a place that's deeper than just bodies touching with a very high degree of passion and the belief that it was psychologically, spiritually motivated, the belief I use. It's amazing to me how that concept of belief gets negated and you really infuse it. We really had something special. That infusion of that heightened romantic projection into something. Like, okay, why? Why not? Where did it go? How commonly I hear that. I don't want to be dealing with where did it go too much more. I'm sort of done with that. Knock on psychic wood, but nonetheless, slow is cool. And so that's what I'm encouraging people. Keep your fucking clothes on. You know, and keep overt expressions of attraction more connected to expressions of caring, so that there isn't an artificial sense of expectation. We need to further this. That make sense?
Yeah, I'm actually not.
I should write a book on romance.
I'm not even talking about the sexuality part, the sexual part.
No, I'm not either. I'm not either.
Yeah.
Not really.
It's like,
Just in case, just in case it happened.
yeah.
Just in case. Just want to cover that base.
You know, it's a simple act of just being with that person. You know, I feel that a lot of people talk about it, but really, do we really spend even the time talking to each other, really total present with one another? I feel it's so hard.
Hard to be that present?
No, hard to find.
Jada, right? Jada. Did I pronounce it correctly? Jada. It is hard to find. I want you to ask the entire group, is it hard to find? No. Anyone who would agree with her saying that really intimate, awakened conversation, non-sexual, awakened, intimate conversation is hard to find? Who would be willing to stand up for her? Let's give her a standing ovation. I mean, I think it's profound that you're roaring that out like a lioness. My teachers would say it's so rare that it's like 1 in 100 million. I was one of the only people in his life that he was really, truly, radically open with, and I was an outsider. It's so remarkable. People would be shocked that he and I would be in dialogues. One of the most famous, learned monks in all of Burma, the most elder. And because I knew the rhythms of his heart, and he had so much love for me, but he was so intelligent at an emotional level, and so skilled in a room this size, half this size, with bookshelves that went up above this lady's head. He'd be in a conversation with you, Jada, and you would be talking about something very intimate and very interesting, Dostoevsky or Tolstoy even, as it interrelated with transformational wisdom in some obscure text in Buddhist theory. He'd go like that, and he was older. He'd walk over, he'd have his attendant who, they'd talk in Burmese, climb the ladder, he'd push it over a little bit, pull out the book, know the page, bring it back to his seat, and read from it to help support a greater understanding of what we're talking about. We'd do that until 10 at night, 11 at night, 4 in the morning, whenever I was in the country. And what a gift, huh? To have that, and boys and girls sitting around as well who would offer insight or tea, and the clock wasn't ticking anymore, and there wasn't a need to consummate it or disappear from it. It was pure in a heart stream. The more that we have taste of that, the more we're willing to call it in. That's why I'm asking people, take pictures, video, encourage your tribe to come out to evolve this intimate discussion and this dialogue, so that we don't have to say that we're alone. We're a Sangha, a new world Dharma Sangha of awakening intelligence. And you're not alone. You know, I think you're being heard here. I certainly respect you. And no doubt you have amazing men and women in your life. And I'm right with you. There's not a person in my life who I respect that doesn't say it's rare. If I were to confide in what my friends would never be willing to say publicly, most of them are lonely. They've learned to coexist with it. So.
My question is a bit related, sort of the other end of the spectrum, really.
Let's keep the questions really concise if we can. I have a short attention span at the moment.
Yeah, it's just a question about the balance between impulsivity, discernment, judgment in meeting people. I grew up in a very remote part of Australia, and in a country town where everyone kind of knew each other, and haven't really lived in big cities much. So just walking down the street, I feel like I almost have an information overload of trying to assess what sort of level of interaction I have with everyone. Bali's it's kind of useful in Bali because I usually interact with everyone. But I just find that balance of trying to decide about inclusivity and judgment and discernment. I lived in Tasmania for 25 years, and that's quite a polarised community. So a lot of people are either for old growth logging or against old growth logging. So I think that encourages a judgment of people. So I just I find that intensity of all my interactions, and I realise that takes me off my balance a little bit.
Really interesting point. I don't think you're alone in that, especially as we become more implicitly psychic. I think part of the human evolution today in consciousness is that we're inhabiting more dimensions of existing levels of intelligence. I think just having a digital device kind of plugs us into a type of psychic power. When you think about how long ago FaceTime didn't exist, or video conferencing, and all of a sudden people around the world are seeing each other instantly. That's a kind of psychic power, and the interrelatedness of phenomena and numerals and data that is infiltrating everything. I feel like sometimes I am living in a psychic field of knowing where you start and where I end. I don't know how much of my thoughts are your thoughts and how much of my thoughts are someone else's thoughts. So this deep intersubjectivity, as it's been called, I think you're just describing a natural phenomena where I go in response to that. Sometimes I let my mind riff with it, especially when I'm sitting down with someone. I'll really let myself enter shared space. Am I feeling her thoughts? What am I hearing? How am I hearing it? Where am I feeling it? What do I feel as a result of feeling it? And not needing to explain that to my cognitive mind or even the need to respond. That's a very key thing for me in life today, is not needing to respond, but to feel, let it pass through, be the space in this room, in this world, let the air blow right through you, all the thoughts, the impressions, the sounds, the radiation, just let it go right through. The right throughness is a very fine art. That's one. Two, when you feel overloaded, and it sounds like you're saying that at times.
Yeah, at times. There's an excitement and an interest in the human condition, but sometimes it can be overloading. I just feel like I would like to be more. I see people in Ubud who have a sort of a calmness or a sense of maybe slight detachment. I'm not sure that I want that, but
so you're explaining.
I wonder whether it would be good for me.
I want to be clear that you and I are communicating. So you're saying now you're looking for a type of person.
No, I'm actually a little bit unsure of how to interact with people on a day-to-day basis on the street. Because I grew up in Australia, I feel like I'm connected to everyone, or feel like I have to have a relationship with everyone that I'm meeting.
Got it.
And that is all that complexity and nuances of inclusivity and judgment and discernment are going on with every single interaction with me.
I would say you have a beautiful mind.
Yeah.
I would just say to be a beautiful mind. There's nothing wrong with smiling to people regardless. I think it's one of the joys of being in Bali, is that there's a lot of receptivity for goodness. And so be a remarkable expression of this beautiful mind from your conditioning in Australia. Maybe even stop at times and even sanctify the space. Can I buy you some tea, my friend? All of a sudden you meet this remarkable Balinese girl that looks at you. Where are you from, sir? Oh, I'm just an Australian who lived in the area who loves just about everyone. And God, you're a magnificent, beautiful woman. Well, I've never seen a more beautiful man in my life. Next thing you know, you're holding hands. Next thing you know, you're at a cafe and you're introducing her to everyone. Next thing you know, you're having a wedding and the whole group is coming. Fall in love, dude. You've already got the makings of it. That's my advice. Fall in love. Wherever you are, with whom you're with, fall in love. And it may be just the one, and meanwhile, we're happy.
Probably the main thing is to be grounded within that. Is something that I need to
Oh,
learn.
fuck it. Fuck it. Fuck groundedness. Be embodied with your partner. I would ask for the highest level of physical relationship, emotional relationship, psychical relationship, humanly possible within my capacity. And be so fucking receptive everywhere you go. That's my operating system. With boundaries. Because I'm a little bit scared. I've been overwhelmed by my emotions, like you. And so I want to stay receptive, but I got a little bit of a parameter, but I'm totally available. And I listen, but I don't need to be in a hurry. But falling in love is totally cool. And it's amazing how you can be polyamorous and celibate and be in love with a lot of different men and women. I mean, it's quite remarkable that you can be bisexual, you can be celibate, you can be heterosexual, and you can be poly, bi, and hetero by being celibate. So you experiment with these new dimensions of masculine and feminine energy that you normally wouldn't have a chance to explore. I mean, what does it mean to be romantic and celibate? What does it mean to be erotic and celibate? What does it mean to be sapio-spiritualized sexual, to make love with consciousness? That's a very interesting domain. People normally do it in couples, but very rarely do they do it in emerging friendships. Doesn't need to be overtly sexual, but what turns you on is a question. What turns your mind on? You know, you and I talked a lot. We've been at dinner a lot. But Josh has been there. Jennifer's been there. Heidi's been there. Other people can come tonight. It's very curious to meet fresh, alive, organic human life where there's the possibility of anything. That's another thing that I've noticed in my life is I walk down the street and I notice sometimes who is and who isn't. And I notice an unconscious sometimes assessment, not a judgment. And I impose upon them ideas of complexity or struggle. And it's like a narration, a storytelling. But other times it's very easy to dismiss and to stay in a kind of closed off posture. And you wait to the place that you're arriving to be more open. And so my advice to myself is very much like yours. I'm willing to smile at people. I'm willing to look at people. I really like Bali for that reason, that people actually do make unusual, energetic contact here. In lots of cities, I mean in Vancouver where I live, it's totally taboo. You can go to Whole Foods for 2 years and running and you see the same people. Very rarely will they make contact. They all have Lululemon mats and designer kids and SUVs, and they all have, you know, Shiva, Shakti, all the things imposed upon their minds and bodies. But there's no real emotional, physical, psychical contact. Here it's very different. In Burma it's also very different, really different. When I was in Yugoslavia during the war, it was almost mandatory to be in an erotic, romantic, available, transcendent philosophy together. That was like the starting point of relationships. It was so pronounced. It was like, I got very addicted. Really addicted. And I kind of want to live more in that world. So, being in a monastery, those of you who come to the monastery in Burma, you'll see that they reinvent eroticism and romance and sexuality in ways that really are post-tantric. It's amazing. It's a society, a culture of the sapiosexualized spiritual mind. They make love with liberating concepts. They really do. I mean, I can't go as far as to say that it's orgasmic, but there are a lot of orgasms in monasteries that are unprompted by a physical part, touching a physical part. It's a physical phenomena, an emotional phenomena, a psychical phenomena. And people have all kinds of unbelievable romantic experiences, never ever having physically touched. But they know each other so well. It's like a beautiful bond in a way that I've never known. So there's a lot to be said in doing exactly what I'm encouraging myself to do. And should you be the forerunner in that area, I'll follow your lead. Don't forget to invite me to your marriage.
Alan, I just wanted to say, and this isn't so much a question, it's more, oh sorry.
We're going to take a break after this.
This isn't so much a question, more of a comment, just based on the last couple of questions. Over the last few days, one of the things that you said which had the biggest impact on me was this comment you made about degenerate states of mind, one of which being greed, and then you referred it to the process of love and loving someone and saying, you know, there's this way that you can love someone from a point of greed where it's actually about, oh, I want this person. I want this person in my life. I want this person to love me. I want to be loved. I want to be in love. And it actually becomes a greed state as opposed to simply just turning up and letting whatever happens be, and for that to be beautiful and for that to be enough. And I just thought that is really exactly what you're saying here. But it just hit me so much over the last couple of days, that as an idea, which is I think where we find more peace in this, is actually just being okay with not needing it to be more than just our own expression of love, assuming that it's within a healthy reciprocal state, assuming that, being okay to just go, I'm just going to give love, and whatever the love is that I get back, that's okay.
That's beautiful.
Well, you said it, so.
I know, thank you. I don't remember saying it. I was like, amazing. They must have just come out of the nowhere. I said that?
You did, but that's me piecing it back together.
Okay,
but you did say all those things.
Yeah, there's something very elegant about being in a natural process with people that doesn't impose, or minimizes, I should say, I don't like to be out, that minimizes expectations and fears. That kind of higher frequency play takes a reciprocal energy, a very rare kind of an individual. So it's there. It's there. I mean, if you're a man, there's amazing women everywhere that know that kind of frequency. It's in the male realm, I don't know. I'm in the discovery of new men in my life. I've mentioned that I have lost all of the principal men in my life in the last 3 years. They've all died. I have one male friend left that's really long term. So I'm in openness to male energy. I'm in discovery of what it means to get closer to men and learn from each other. And there's no way to replace old friendships, but I'm open to that discovery. So thank you from my heart. I don't know what time it is, but if we wanted to take about, say, 10 minutes or so to just keep this place quiet, 15 minutes, walk, write, stretch. We'll come back in about 15, carry on. And thank you from my heart.